I'm Dana Denpa, and you're watching FYI. The flowers are blooming, the grass is greening, and the trees have their buds, which means the start of the Ann Arbor compost season. With all of us staying home, we are more likely to start cleaning up our yards after a long winter. While the program has officially begun, there are some restrictions in place as we navigate through the pandemic. Joining me is Robert Kellar, Communications Specialist for the City of Ann Arbor. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Afternoon. How are you, Dana?
I'm doing all right. We've talked about compost quite a few times on FYI, obviously, but this year's a little different. And I think I've noticed a lot of people bagging stuff still. So I thought it was sort of important that we talk about what we can compost, the typical stuff we normally would talk about, and then kind of touching base on what we shouldn't be doing right now with our compost. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about the compost program and what we should be throwing in our compost cart to start?
Well, as your viewers may already know, compost season started a little differently this year, and that is because we're starting the season only picking up carts. And the reason for that is simple. Dealing with the pandemic, we're trying to avoid as much contact with material that may be infected as possible. And unfortunately, with yard waste bags, those have to be put into the trucks by hand. There's no automation involved. Unlike our carts, which are a lifted arm attached to the solid waste vehicle. So this year we're starting with carts only. And I know that's disappointing to a lot of folks who may have already been spending time and putting together their yard waste in bags. And we're very sorry about that. However, what we're asking people to do for the meantime is to go ahead and move their yard waste bags from the extension of the curbs, put them in a dry location so they don't get wet, so they can be moved later, and either save those bags for when regular service resumes, which we hope will be sooner rather than later, or there you can put them over time in your cart. One or two should fit in your cart each pickup session. Or we have some tips on our compost page about dealing with yard waste at home. There's lots of kind of creative, inventive things you can do.
Well, that was what I was kind of wondering. If we're thinking okay, maybe we're not composting as much because our cart's full all the time or something. Can we be composting at home? Can we start our own yard compost and stuff like that?
Absolutely. In fact, starting your own compost pile, if you have that ability, is a great idea, especially just if you're a gardener, if you have some vegetation you want to help give that boost to. Using some homemade compost, you definitely can do so. And at a2gov.org/compost, we have a link to an entire page full of ideas, whether that's building a compost pile in your backyard, preferably your backyard. Some might do it in the front yard, but you want to be cognizant of your neighbors. But there's other things too, people that might not have thought of, which is creating a deadwood garden. A lot of people, because we're not picking up bundled limbs and.
Oh, you're frozen here for a second. Hopefully we'll get you back here.
Brush. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. So what were you saying? The bundles?
Yeah, so we're not picking up bundled brush, but there are some creative things you can do. For example, starting a deadwood garden, which is arranging wood in a creative way that helps provide a home for various birds and insects. There's a discipline called stubbery, which many people haven't heard of. It's very English, where you take dead trees, logs, and you plant ferns or mosses in them and arrange them in artistic fashions so they create a garden of them as well.
Oh, wow. Those are actually some pretty decent ideas I wouldn't even have ever thought of myself. So going to the city's compost page is actually pretty beneficial. You can make your yard look maybe better than it's ever looked before.
Absolutely. And, that's the more creative side. The more practical things are simply using your mower without the bag to mulch your grass back into lawn, which is actually very beneficial to your yard anyway. And there's some more labor-intensive things, like maybe there are some ways to replace pieces of lawn, which grow very fast and produce a lot of clippings, to more plant-native species, which are long-term viable. They can be there in the winter and the summer, and they grow more slowly. You don't have to trim them all the time. So there's lots of different ideas.
Mm-hmm. So the other thing is, so maybe some people don't have a cart, or maybe they want a second cart, which I was never 100% sure. Can you have 2 carts? Can you have as many carts as you want?
You can have multiple carts. The difficulty at the moment, as you might expect, is that their demand for carts is very high.
Hmm.
So at the moment, we're able to deliver carts for a $59 fee, and we are putting people who have never had a cart before first in the queue.
Makes complete sense. Yes.
But yes, you could have multiple carts, but we are just letting people know now if they are ordering their second cart, they're going to wait a little bit for that second cart.
Yeah. And then do you still have the 3 sizes, or is it just one size?
The 2 sizes, the 64-gallon and the 96-gallon.
I will say as a resident, I wouldn't, if you can get the bigger one, get it, because that thing fills up really fast.
Absolutely, I would recommend the same thing.
Yeah. So is there anything else that maybe, so like we talked about maybe composting in your yard and stuff. I assume you can't do when you do the yard stuff, I don't know, is there restrictions? Because here in Ann Arbor, in our carts, we can compost like everything. So I don't know if it would be more confusing for people to start a compost pile if they're adding everything, or I don't know how that works.
Well, and that's why I'd recommend going to the website and reading. We link to a very thorough step-by-step process, and they point out many of the restrictions or limitations you can have at home. And one of the most pressing would be while at the city we take meat and bones. That's not something you could do at home. Your compost pile won't produce the heat necessary or the material necessary to break that down.
Mm-hmm. So is there anything else happening that maybe you could tell people about, or is that pretty much cover where we're at? And I will say, we hope that obviously all this we end up back at normal, but we all know that there's going to be some sort of a process to getting back to where we were before. So like composting in your cart is probably going to be going on a little longer than maybe even the stay-at-home order, potentially.
Well, developing those routines with a cart now is always a good idea. Accept more things in carts, for example, food waste that we don't in yard waste bags. What I would also suggest is that this is a really good time to make an evaluation of your yard anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and see what changes can be made. I can speak for myself. My wife and I have done that. We have a natural habitat garden in the front of the yard where we removed actually quite a few square feet of grass.
Mm-hmm.
So people can also think about maybe installing a rain garden. Now would be a great time to do that. Washtenaw County has a master rain gardener program and a Facebook group where you can get a lot of tips and information, and it's a great evaluation. See what maybe creative things they can do.
I agree with that. I know I was actually like, I always keep my front yard really nice and my side yard, but then like my backyard sort of takes the hit because I don't always have the time to spend in the backyard. I've already done the front and side yard. So it's like this year I'm like, I'm home. I'm making the backyard look like the way I want it to look. So I agree with you. Let's make our yards look really nice and sort of trapped in our houses anyways right now. We lost Robert here. So, but I want to thank Robert for coming on the show. Oh, we're back. You're back again. So
The beauty and drawbacks of our Zoom culture.
Yeah, totally. We all know it's all part of it. But I want to thank you so much for coming on FYI and talking with me today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure as always.
For more on this and other programs, visit a2gov.org/CTN. Visit youtube.com/CTN Ann Arbor to see all that we have to offer. And remember to like, comment, and share. Thanks for watching and tune in next time to FYI.